Did you hear what I was playing then? I didn't think it polite to listen, sir. I'm sorry for that, for your sake. I don't play accurately. Anyone can play accurately. But I play with wonderful expression. As far as the piano is concerned, sentiment is my forte. I keep signs for life. Yes, sir. And speaking of the signs of life, have you got the cucumber sandwiches cut for Lady Bracknell? Yes, sir. Ooh. Oh, by the way, lady, I noticed from the book that on Thursday night, when Lord Shulman and Mr. Worthing were dining with me, you have listed 8 bottles of champagne as having been consumed. Yes, sir. 8 bottles and a pint. Why is it that at a bachelor's establishment, the servants invariably drink all the champagne? I ask merely for information. I attribute it to the superior quality of the wine, sir. I've often observed that in many households, the champagne is rarely of a first-rate brand. Good heavens, is marriage so demoralizing as that? I believe it is a very pleasant state, sir. I have had very little experience of it myself up to the present. I was only married once. That was in consequence of a misunderstanding between myself and a young person. I don't spend time much interested in your family life, Lane. No, sir, it is not a very interesting subject. I rarely think of myself. Very natural, I'm sure, Lane. That will do. Thank you. Thank you, sir. Lane's views of marriage seem somewhat lax. Really, if the lower orders don't set us a good example, what on earth is the use of them? They seem as a class of absolutely no sense of moral responsibility. Mr. Earnest Worthing. How are you, my dear Ernest? What brings you up to town?
Oh, pleasure, pleasure. What else should bring one anywhere? Speaking as usual, I see, Alger.
I believe it is customary in good society to have some sort of refreshment at around 5 o'clock. Where have you been since last Thursday?
In the country.
What on earth do you do there?
When one is in town, one amuses oneself. When one is in the country, one amuses other people. It is excessively boring.
Who are these people you amuse?
Oh, neighbors, neighbors.
You've got nice neighbors in your part of Shropshire.
Perfectly horrid. Never speak to one of them.
How immensely you must amuse them. But by the way, Shropshire is your county, is it not?
Shropshire? Yes, of course. Hello. Why all these cups? Why cucumber sandwiches? Why such reckless extravagance in one so young? Who is coming to tea?
Really, Aunt Augusta and Gwendolyn.
Oh, how perfectly delightful.
Yes, that is all very well, but I don't think Aunt Augusta will quite approve of your being here.
May I ask why?
My dear fellow, the way that you flirt with Gwendolyn is perfectly disgraceful. It is almost as bad as the way Gwendolyn flirts with you.
I am in love with Gwendolyn. I've come up to town expressly to propose to her.
I thought you had come up here for pleasure. I call that business.
And how utterly unromantic you are.
There is nothing romantic in proposing. Why, it is very romantic to be in love, but there is nothing romantic about a definite proposal. Why, one may be accepted. One usually is, I believe. But then the excitement's all over. The very essence of romance is uncertainty, and if I ever get married, I will certainly try and forget the fact.
I have no doubt about that, Gerald. She's a divorce court especially invented for people whose memories are so curiously constituted.
There is no speculating on that subject, my dear fellow. Divorces were made in heaven. Oh, please don't touch the sandwiches. I ordered them specially for Aunt Augusta.
But you have been eating them all the time.
Yes, well, that is because she is my aunt. Have some bread and butter. The bread and butter is for Gwendolyn. Gwendolyn's devoted to bread and butter.
A very good bread and butter it is too.
You need not act as if you were going to eat at all. You behave as if you were married to her already, and if you are not married to her already, I don't think you ever will be.
Why on earth do you say that?
Well, in the first place, girls never marry the men they flirt with. They don't think it right.
Oh, that is nonsense.
It isn't. It is a great truth. It accounts for the extraordinary number of bachelors one sees all over the place. And in the second place, I don't give my consent.
Your consent?
I dear fellow, Gwendolyn is my first cousin. And before I allow you to marry her, you must clear up the whole question of Cecily first.
Cecily? What on earth do you mean? What do you mean, Algy, by Cecily? I don't know anyone of the name of Cecily.
Bring me the cigarette case Mr. Worthing left in the smoking room last time we dined here.
Yes, sir.
Do you mean to say you've had my cigarette case all this time? I wish to goodness you had let me know. I've been writing frantic letters to Scotland Yard about it. I was very near offering a large reward.
I certainly wish you would offer one. I happen to be more than usually hard up.
There is no good offering a large reward now that the thing is found.
That is very mean of you, Ernest, I must say. However, no matter, for now that I look at the inscription, it turns out the thing really isn't yours after all.
Oh, of course it is mine. You have seen me with it 100 times, and you have no right to read what is written inside. It is a very ungentlemanly thing to read a private cigarette case.
It's perfectly absurd to have a hard and fast rule about what one should read and what one shouldn't read. More than half of modern culture depends on what one shouldn't read.
I am quite aware of the fact, and I don't propose to discuss modern culture. It isn't the sort of thing one should talk of in private. I simply want my cigarette case back.
Yes, but this isn't your cigarette case. This cigarette case is a present from someone of the name of Cecily. And you said yourself you don't know anyone of that name.
Well, if you must know, Cecily happens to be my aunt.
Your aunt?
Yes, charming old lady she is too. Lives at Tunbridge Wells. Just give it back to me, Algy.
Yes, well, then why does she call herself Little Cecily if she is your aunt and lives at Tunbridge Wells? Little Cecily with her fondest love.
And my dear fellow, what on earth is there in that? Some aunts are tall, some aunts are not tall. You seem to think that every aunt should be just like your aunt. That is absurd. For heaven's sake, just give me back my cigarette case.
Yes, but this isn't your cigarette case. And why does your aunt call you her dear uncle? From Little Cecily with her fondest love to her dear Uncle Jack. There's no objection, I admit, to an aunt being a small aunt, but why an aunt, no matter what her size may be, should call her own nephew her uncle, I can't quite make out. And besides, your name isn't Jack at all. It's Ernest.
It isn't Ernest, it's Jack.
But you have always told me it was Ernest, and I've introduced you to everyone as Ernest. And you answer to the name of Ernest. You even look as if your name was Ernest. You're the most earnest-looking person I ever saw in my life. It's perfectly absurd you saying your name isn't Ernest. It is on your card, Mr. Earnest Worthing before the Albany. I'm keeping this just in case you ever attempt to deny it to me, or to Gwendolyn, or to anybody else.
Well, my name is Ernest in town and Jack in the country, and the cigarette case was given to me in the country.
Yes, but that does not account for the fact that your little Aunt Cecily, who lives at Tunbridge Wells, calls you her dear uncle. Come, old boy, you had much better have the thing out at once.
Now, my dear Algy, you talk exactly as if you were a dentist. It is very vulgar to talk like a dentist, but one isn't a dentist. It produces a false impression.
That is exactly what dentists always do. Now go on, tell me the whole thing. And I might add, I've always suspected you of being a confirmed and secret bunburyist. I'm quite sure of it now.
Bunburyist? What on earth do you mean by bunburyist?
I'll tell you the meaning of that incomparable expression as soon as you're kind enough to tell me why you are Ernest in town and Jack in the country.
Will produce my cigarette case first.
Here it is. Now, produce an explanation and pray, make it improbable.
My dear fellow, there is nothing improbable about my explanation at all. In fact, it's perfectly ordinary. Old Mr. Thomas Cardew, who adopted me when I was a little boy, made me in his will guardian to his granddaughter, Miss Cecily Cardew. Cecily, who addresses me as her uncle, motives of respect that you could not possibly appreciate, lives at my place in the country under the care of her admirable governess, Miss Prison.
Where is your place in the country, by the way?
That is nothing to you, dear boy. You are not going to be invited. I may tell you candidly the place is not in Shropshire.
I suspected that, my dear fellow. I've Bunburyed all over Shropshire on 2 separate occasions. But go on, tell me why you are earnest in town in Jack's country.
My dear fellow, I don't know whether you will be able to understand my real motives. You are hardly serious enough. When one is placed in the position of guardian, one has to adopt a high moral tone on all subjects. It's one's duty to do so. And as that high moral tone can neither be said to produce much to one's health or one's happiness, in order to get up to town, I have always pretended to have a younger brother of the name of Earnest, who lives in the Albany and gets into the most dreadful scrapes. That, my dear Algy, is the whole truth, pure and simple.
The truth is really pure and never simple. Modern life would be very tedious if it were either. In modern literature, a complete impossibility.
That wouldn't at all be a bad thing.
Literary criticism is not your forte, my dear fellow. You better leave that to people who didn't attend the university. They do so well of it in the daily papers. What you are is a Bunburyist. I was quite right in saying you were a Bunburyist. In fact, you're one of the most advanced Bunburyists I know.
What on earth do you mean?
You have invented a younger brother called Ernest. You may be able to come up to town as often as you like. I've invented an invaluable permanent invalid called Bunbury, so I may be able to go down to the country whenever I choose. Bunbury is perfectly invaluable. In fact, if it weren't for Bunbury's extraordinary bad health, for instance, I wouldn't be able to dine with you at Willis's tonight, for I've been rather much engaged to Aunt Augusta for more than a week.
I haven't asked you to dine with me anywhere tonight.
I know. You are very careless about sending out invitations, and it is so foolish of you. Nothing annoys people more than not receiving invitations.
You had much better dine with your Aunt Augusta.
I haven't the smallest intention of doing anything of the kind. To begin with, I dine there on Monday, and once a week is quite enough to dine with one's own relations. And in the second place, whenever I do dine there, they always treat me as a member of the family and place me down next to either no women at all or 2. And in the third place, if I do dine there, I already know who she will place me down next to. She will place me next to Mary Farquhar, who is always flirting with her own husband across the dinner table. It is not very pleasant indeed. It is not even decent. That sort of thing is enormously on the increase. The amount of women in London who flirt with their own husbands is perfectly scandalous. It looks so bad. It is really washing one's own clean linen in public. And besides, to be a Bunburyist, I naturally want to talk to you about Bunburying. I need to tell you all the rules.
I'm not a Bunburyist at all. If Gwendolyn accepts me, I'm going to kill my brother. Cecily is becoming a little too much interested in him. It is rather a bore. So, I'm going to get rid of Ernest. And I strongly advise you to do the same with your with your invalid friend, with the absurd name.
Nothing will induce me to part ways with Bunbury, and if you ever get married, which seems to me to be extremely problematic, you'll want to know Bunbury. A man who marries without knowing Bunbury has a very tedious time.
That is nonsense. If I married Gwendolyn, and she's the only girl I ever saw in my life whom I would marry, I would most certainly not want to know Bunbury.
Then your wife will. You don't seem to realize that in married life, 3 is company, 2 is none.
That, my dear young friend, is the theory of the drop French drama I've been founding for the last 50 years.
Yes, and that the happy English home is proven half the time.
For heaven's sake, don't try to be cynical. It's perfectly easy to be cynical.
It isn't easy to be anything nowadays. There is such beastly competition about. That must be Aunt Augusta. Only relatives or creditors seem to ring in that Wagnerian manner. Now, I get out of the way for this. 10 minutes if you have an opportunity for proposing to Gwendolyn. Can I dine with you at Willis's tonight?
I suppose if you want to.
Yes, but you must be serious about it. I hate people who are not serious about their meals. It's so shallow of them.
Lady Bracknell and Miss Fairfax.
Good afternoon, dear Algernon. I hope you are behaving very well.
I'm feeling very well, Augusta.
That's not quite the same thing. In fact, the two things rarely go together.
Dearie, you are smart.
I'm always smart. My name is Mr. Worthing.
You're quite perfect, Miss Fairfax.
I hope I'm not that. There's no room for development. I have time to develop in many directions.
I'm sorry to be a little late, Algernon, but I was obliged to call on dear Lady Harbury. I had not been there since her poor husband's death. I never saw a woman so altered. She looks quite 20 years younger. Now I'll have a cup of tea and one of those nice cucumber sandwiches you promised me.
Certainly, Aunt Augusta.
Gwendolyn, won't you come sit here?
Thanks, Mama. I'm quite comfortable where I am.
Good heavens, Lane, why are there no cucumber sandwiches? I ordered them specially.
There were no cucumbers in the market this morning, sir. I went down twice.
No cucumbers?
No, sir, not even for ready money.
That will do, Lane. Thank you.
Thank you,
I'm greatly distressed, Aunt Augusta, about there being no cucumbers in the market today. Not even for ready money.
It really makes no matter, Algernon. I had some problems with dear Lady Harbury, who seems to me to be living entirely for pleasure now.
I hear her hair has turned quite gold with grief.
It certainly has changed its color, from what cause I, of course, cannot say. Thank you. I've quite a treat for you tonight, Algernon. I'm going to send you down with Mary Farquhar. She is such a nice woman to her husband. It is delightful to watch them.
I'm afraid, Aunt Augusta, I shall have to give up the pleasure of dining with you tonight after all.
I should hope not, Algernon. It would put my table completely out. Your uncle would have to dine upstairs. Fortunately, he is accustomed to that.
It is a great bore, and I need hardly say a great disappointment to me, but I have received a telegram saying that my poor friend Bunbury is feeling very ill, and they seem to think I should be with him.
It is very strange. This Mr. Bunbury seems to suffer from curiously bad health.
Oh yes, poor Bunbury is a dreadful invalid.
Well, I must say, Algernon, I think it is high time that Mr. Bunbury made up his mind whether he was going to live or to die. This shilly-shallying with the question is absurd, nor do I in any way approve of the modern sympathy with invalids. I consider it morbid. Health is the primary duty of life. I'm always telling that to your poor uncle, but he never seems to take much notice, as far as any improvement in his ailment goes. I would be much obliged if you would ask Mr. Bunbury from me to not have a relapse on Saturday, for I rely on you to arrange my music for me. 'Tis my last reception, and one wants something that will encourage conversation in others, particularly at the end of season when everyone has said particularly whatever they had to say, which in most cases was probably not much.
I'll speak to Bunbury, Aunt Augusta, if he is still conscious. Though I think I can promise he'll be all right by Saturday. Of course, the music is a great difficulty, for when there is good music, people don't listen. But when there is bad music, people don't talk. But I'll run over the program with you if you'll kindly follow me into the next room for a moment.
Thank you, Algernon. It is very thoughtful of you. The program will be delightful, I'm sure, after a few expurgations. French songs I cannot possibly allow. People always seem to think they are improper and look shocked, which is vulgar, or that which is worse. But German sounds a thoroughly respectable language, and indeed I believe it is so. Gwendolyn, you will accompany me?
Certainly, Mama.
Charming days for Miss Fairfax.
Pray, don't talk to me about the weather, Mr. Worthing. Whenever people talk to me about the weather, I feel quite certain they mean something else. It makes me so nervous.
I do mean something else.
I thought so. In fact, I am never wrong.
And I would like to be allowed to take advantage of Lady Bracknell's temporary absence.
I would certainly advise you to do so. Mamma has a way of coming back suddenly into her room, which I've often had to speak to her about.
Miss Fairfax, ever since I met you, I have admired you more than any other girl I have ever met, steady speaking. I met you.
Yes. I am quite well aware of the fact, and I often wish that in public, at any rate, you'd been more demonstrative. For me, you've always had an irresistible fascination. Even before I met you, I was far from indifferent to you. We live, as I hope you know, Mr. Worthing, in an age of ideals. The fact is confirmation in the more expensive monthly magazines, and has reached its way to the provincial pulpits, I am told. And my ideal has always been to love someone of the name of Earnest. There is something in that name that inspires absolute confidence. The moment I was on mission to me, he had a friend called Earnest. I knew I was destined to love you.
But you really love me, Winston.
Passionately.
Darling, you don't know how happy you've made me.
My own Earnest.
But you don't mean to say that you couldn't love me if my name was something else.
Why, your name is Earnest.
Yes, I know it is, but supposing it was something else, you mean to say you couldn't love me then?
That is clearly a metaphysical speculation. And like most metaphysical speculations, has very little reference at all to the actual events of real life as we know them.
Well, to speak quite candidly, darling, I don't care much for the name of Ernest. I don't think the name suits me at all.
It suits you perfectly. It is a divine name. It has a music of its own. It produces vibrations.
Really, and I think lots of other much nicer names. I think Chuck, for instance, is a charming name.
Jack? No. That's very little music of the name Jack. And yet all indeed. And then that thrill. There's absolutely no vibrations. I have known several Jacks, and they all have exceptional more than usually polite. Besides, Jack's notorious domesticity for John. I pity any woman married to a man called John. She would probably never know the entrancing pleasure of a single moment's solitude. The only really safe name is Honest.
Gwendolyn, I must be christened at once. I mean, you must be married at once. There's no time to be lost.
Married? Mr. Worthing?
Well, surely. You know that I love you, and you let me believe, Miss Fairfax, that you are not altogether indifferent toward me.
I adore you. But you haven't proposed yet. Nothing has been said on marriage at all. The subject hasn't even been touched on.
Well, I propose to you now.
I think it would be a remarkable opportunity. And to spare you an impossible disappointment, I think it's only fair to tell you quite frankly beforehand, as I am fully determined to accept you.
Oh, Gwendolyn.
Yes, Mr. Worthing. What have you got to say to me?
You know what I got to say to you.
Yes, but you don't say it.
Gwendolyn, will you marry me?
Of course I will, darling. How long have you been about it? I am afraid you have very little experience of how to propose.
I know one. I've never loved anyone in the world but you.
Yes, but men often propose with practice. I know my brother Gerald does. All my girlfriends tell me so. What wonderfully blue eyes you have, Ernest. They are quite blue. I hope you'll always look at me, just like that. Especially now
Mr. Worthing, rise, sir, from this semi-recumbent posture. Most indecorous.
Mama! I would like you to retire. This is no place for you. Besides, Mr. Worthing has not quite finished yet.
Finished what, may I ask?
I am engaged to Mr. Worthing, Mama.
Pardon me, you are not engaged to anyone. When you do become engaged to someone, I or your father, should his health permit him, will inform you of the fact. Engagement should come on a young girl as a surprise, pleasant or unpleasant as the case may be. But it is hardly a matter that she could be allowed to arrange for herself. And now I have a few questions to put to you, Mr. Worthing. While I'm making these inquiries, you, Gwendolyn, will wait for me below in the carriage.
Mama.
In the carriage, Gwendolyn. Gwendolyn, the carriage!
Yes, Mama.
You can take a seat, Mr. Worthing.
Thank you, Lady Bracknell. I prefer standing.
I feel bound to tell you that you are not down on my list of eligible young men. Although I have the same list as the Duchess of Bolton has. We work together, in fact. However, I am quite ready to enter your name should your answers be what a truly affectionate mother requires. Do you smoke?
Well, yes, I must admit I smoke.
I am pleased to hear it. There are far too many idle men in London as it is. How old are you?
29.
A very good age to be married at. I have always been of the opinion that a man who desires to get married should know either everything or nothing. Which do you know?
I know nothing, Lady Bracknell.
I am pleased to hear it. I do not approve of anything that tampers with natural ignorance. Ignorance is like a delicate, exotic fruit. Touch it, and the bloom is gone. The whole theory of modern education is radically unsound. Fortunately, in England at any rate, education produces no effect whatsoever. If it did, it would prove a serious danger to the upper classes and probably lead to acts of violence across from the square. What is your income?
Between 7,000 and 8,000 a year.
In land or in investments?
In investments, chiefly.
That is satisfactory. What's between the duties expected of one during one's lifetime and the duties exacted from one after one's death? Land has ceased to be either a profit or a pleasure. It gives one position and prevents one from keeping it up. That's all that can be said about land.
I have a country house with some land attached to it, of course, about 1,500 acres, I believe, but I don't depend on that for my real income. In fact, as far as I can make out, the poachers are the only ones who make anything out of it.
A country house. How many bedrooms? Well, that point can be cleared up afterwards, I suppose. You have a townhouse, I hope. A girl with a simple, unspoiled nature like Gwendolyn could hardly be expected to reside in the country.
Well, I own a house in Belgrade Square, but it is let by the year to Lady Bloxham.
Lady Bloxham? I don't know her.
Oh, she goes about very little. She is a lady considerably advanced in years.
Ah, nowadays that is no guarantee of respectability. What number in Belgrade Square?
149.
Ah, the unfashionable side. I thought there was something. However, that could be easily altered.
Do you mean the fashion or the style?
Both, if necessary, I presume. What are your politics?
Well, I'm afraid I really have none. I'm a liberal unionist.
Oh, they count as Tories. They dine with us, or come in the evening at any rate. And now to minor matters. Are your parents living?
I have lost both my parents.
To lose one parent, Mr. Worthing, may be regarded as misfortune. To lose both looks like carelessness. Who was your father? He was evidently a man of some wealth. Was he born in what the radical papers call the purple of farmers, or did he rise through the ranks of aristocracy?
I'm afraid I really don't know. The fact is, Lady Bracknell, I said I lost my parents. It would be nearer the truth to say they seem to have lost me. I don't know who I am by birth. I was found.
Found!
The late Mr. Thomas Cardew of 149 Belgrade Square found me and gave me the name of Worthing because he had a ticket to Worthing in his pocket at the time. Worthing is a place in Sussex, Lady Bracknell. It is a seaside resort.
Where did this charitable gentleman with the first-class ticket to the seaside resort find you?
In a handbag.
A handbag!
Yes, Lady Bracknell, I was in a handbag. A somewhat large, black leather handbag with handles to it. An ordinary handbag, in fact.
In what locality did this Mr. James or Thomas Cardew come across this ordinary handbag?
In the cloakroom at Victoria Station, which was given to him in the state for his own.
The cloakroom at Victoria Station?
Yes, the writing line.
The line is immaterial. Mr. Wood, I must confess I feel somewhat bewildered by what you have just told me. To be born or at any rate bred in a handbag, whether it had handles or not, display a contempt for the ordinary decencies of family life, which reminds one of the worst successes of the French Revolution. And I'm sure you recall what that unfortunate movement led to. As for the particular locality in which this handbag was found, the cloakroom at a railway station may serve to conceal a social indiscretion, and has probably indeed been used for that purpose before now. But it can hardly be regarded as an assured basis for a recognized position in good society.
May I ask you then what you would advise me to do? I need hardly say I would do anything to ensure Gwendolyn's happiness.
I would strongly advise you, Mr. Willing, to try and acquire some relations as soon as possible, and make a definite effort to produce one parent of either sex before the season is quite over.
I don't see how I could possibly do that. I can produce the handbag at any moment. It is in my dressing room at home. I really think that should satisfy you, Lady Bracknell.
Me, sir? What has it to do with me? You could hardly imagine that Lord Bracknell and myself would allow our only daughter, a girl raised with the utmost care, to marry into a cloakroom and form an alliance with a parcel. Mr. Wood.
Good morning! For goodness sake, Algy, don't play that ghastly tune! How idiotic you are!
Didn't it go off all right? Didn't mean to say Gwendolyn refused you. If there's a way she has, she is always refusing people. I think it to be most ill-natured of her.
Gwendolyn is as right as a trivet. As far as she's concerned, we're engaged. The mother is perfectly unbearable. Never met such a gorgon. I don't really know what a gorgon is like, but I'm quite certain Lady Bracknell is one. At any rate, she's a monster without being hit, which is rather unfair. I beg your pardon, Algy. I suppose I shouldn't talk to you about your own aunt in that way before you.
My dear fellow, I love hearing my own relations abused. Exactly what when it's told. Relations are merely a pack of people without the remotest knowledge of how to live nor the smallest instinct of when to die.
That's nonsense, which isn't. Well, don't argue about the matter. You always want to argue about things.
Well, that is what things were originally made for.
Oh my word, if I thought that, I'd shoot myself. Don't suppose there's any chance of Gwendolyn becoming like her mother in about 150 years, do you?
All women become like their mothers. That is their tragedy. No man does, and that's his.
Is that clever?
It's perfectly phrased, and quite as true as anything in civilized life should be.
I am sick to death of cleverness. Everybody is clever nowadays. You can't go anywhere without meeting clever people. Then has become an absolute public nuisance. As good as we have few fools.
We have
I should really like to meet them. What on earth do they offer?
the fools, about the clever people, of course.
What fools?
By the way, did you tell Gwendolyn the truth about your being Ernest in town and Jack in the country?
My dear fellow, the truth isn't the sort of thing one tells a nice, sweet, refined girl.
The only way to behave to a woman is to make love to her if she is pretty, and to someone else if she is plain.
That's nonsense.
What about your brother? What about the profligate Ernest?
Oh, by the end of the week I shall have got rid of him. I'll say he died in Paris of apoplexy. Lots of people die twice that way of apoplexy, don't they?
Yes, it's hereditary. It's the sort of thing that runs in families. You had much better say a severe chill.
You're quite certain this severe chill isn't hereditary or anything of the kind?
Of course it isn't.
Very well. My poor brother Ernest is carried off quite suddenly in Paris by a severe chill. That gets rid of him.
But I thought you said Miss Cardew was a little too much interested in your poor brother Ernest. Won't she feel his loss a good deal?
Oh, that's quite all right. Cecily is not a silly, romantic girl, I'm glad to say. She's got a capital appetite, goes long walks, and pays no attention at all to her lessons.
I would rather like to see Cecily.
I will take very good care you never do. She's excessively pretty and only just 18.
Have you told Gwendolyn the other excessively pretty ward who is only just 18?
Well, one doesn't just blurt these things out to people. Cecily and Gwendolyn are perfectly certain to be great friends. I'll bet you anything you like that within half an hour of them having met, they will be calling each other sister.
Women only do that after they've called each other a lot of other things. We've all been dressing and want to get a good deal of notices. Do you know it is nearly 7?
Oh, it is always nearly 7.
Well, I am hungry.
I never knew you when you weren't.
But what shall we do after dinner? Go to the theater?
Oh, no, I don't listen.
Well, let us go to the club.
Oh, no, I hate talking.
Shall we trot around the Empire at 10?
Oh, no, I can't bear looking at things. It is so silly.
Well, then what shall we do?
Nothing.
It's a lot of hard work doing nothing. However, I don't mind a little hard work when there is no definite object of any kind.
Miss Fairfax.
Gwendolyn, upon my word.
As you kindly turn your back, there's something very particular to say to Mr. Worthing.
Really, Gwendolyn, I don't think I can allow this at all.
Algy, you always adopt a strictly immoral attitude towards life. You're not quite old enough to do that.
My own daughter.
Ernest, we may never be married. By the look of Mamma's face, I really never shall. You can't pay any regard to what the children have to say to them nowadays. Whatever influence I ever had over Mamma, I fear I lost at the age of 3. But, though she may prevent us from becoming man and wife, and I may marry someone else and marry often, nothing I could possibly do can alter my eternal devotion to you.
Dear Gwendolyn.
The story of your romantic origin, as relayed to me by Mamma with confusing comments, has naturally struck the deeper fibers of my nature. Your Christian name has an irresistible fascination. The simplicity of your characters, exquisitely incomprehensible to me. Your town address at the Albany I have. What is your address in the country?
Ah, the Manor House, Woolsey, Hertfordshire.
There is a good postal service, I suppose, and may be necessary to do something desperate. That, of course, will require serious consideration. I will communicate with you daily.
My own one.
How long do you remain in town?
Until Monday.
Good. Algy, you may turn round
Thanks,
now.
I've turned around already.
You may also ring the bell.
You will allow me to escort you to your carriage, my own darling.
Certainly.
But I will see Miss Fairfax out.
Yes, sir.
A glass of sherry, Lane.
Yes, sir.
Tomorrow, Lane, I'm going Bunburying.
Yes, sir.
I should probably not be back till Monday morning, so you can go ahead and pack up all my dress clothes, smoking jacket, and all of my Bunbury suits.
Yes, sir.
I hope tomorrow will be a fine day, Lane.
It never is, sir.
Lane, you are a perfect pessimist.
I do my best to give satisfaction, sir.
There is a sensible, intellectual girl. The only girl I ever cared for in my life. What on earth are you so amused at?
I'm just anxious about poor Bunbury is all.
You you don't take care, your friend Bumper is going to get you into a serious scrape someday.
I love scrapes. They're the only things that are never serious.
Oh, that is nonsense, Algy. You never talk anything but nonsense.
Nobody ever does.